Today is World Architecture Day, and to help us talk about this, we have Lindbergh Alvaranga, President, and Wycliffe Morton, past President of the St. Kitts-Nevis Institute of Architecture. Why am I thinking about food? Oh my gosh, it works on me. Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to Good Morning, SKN.
Good morning, Hortensia. Good morning.
So how long has the St. Kitts-Nevis Institute of Architecture been in operation?
Well, we first formed in July of 2005, and we've had our ups and downs, but we've been going strong since.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Morton, you mentioned that this day has been around since the 1980s. Why wait until 2005 to form the institute?
Well, we actually started to formulate the Institute of Architects in about 94. And so it did take a while for us to have a local institute, but architects are represented at the UN by the UIA, and that is where it started.
Okay.
And we did not have a large number of qualified architects in order to start an institute before the 90s.
All right, so you've made progress since then. We now have more qualified architects. What can you tell us about the mission of the Institute?
Well, primarily, as it is an institute, one of the major factors is education, to provide avenue for education and training, as well as to develop the discourse about architecture and development on the local levels and regional and international.
And the built environment in general.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not just buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the actual spaces around them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you refer to as the built environment?
Everything that we do and touch as human beings
Is related to architecture?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm learning this today, years old. So who are the other members of your group?
Wow, I didn't.
Okay.
That's a long list.
So how many members do you have then?
Currently active, we have probably around 20.
Around 30. If you can't remember, it's St. Kitts-Nevis
Okay,
Institute
good stuff.
of Architecture. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the contribution. Obviously, you mentioned that the Institute is to provide avenues for education, also for discourse. How do you measure the impact of the Institute on the architecture and in St. Kitts-Nevis, rather?
Well, we do not have any metrics set up at this point in time, but because an important part of that is being able to measure. But what we do have amongst the architects is a very lively discourse, interaction in terms of the ethos of architecture and how we perceive creating these spaces for human interaction and living.
Activity, right.
Yeah.
So we normally have a monthly meeting where we have a luncheon. And in that meeting, we have a social aspect, but also a learning aspect as well.
Okay.
So we will have presentations and we will have guests from different fields that impact architecture directly. So 1 minute we will have a lawyer, and there's a legal aspect as well.
That we know.
Another minute we will have meeting. We will have engineers, structural engineers, MEP engineers, and then we'll have salespeople who have products that could further our education as well. So yeah, but we haven't had those since COVID, and we're gonna use this opportunity to jumpstart those regular meetings again.
Okay, good stuff. So I want to know from both of you gentlemen, what is the most important thing you would have learned in your career in architecture?
Empathy.
Empathy, okay.
Really? That's interesting.
Yes, because we can't create our own utopia, as most architects would like to do. We create it for other people and how they live and what they needed to do. Right? So empathy is important. But that's my personal thing.
I can't wait to hear what Mr. Martin's going to say.
Well, for me, one of the greatest things about architecture is being able to propagate the knowledge of architecture and the built environment into future generations.
Teacher.
Lecturer.
A lecturer.
I'm curious. sitting in your classroom virtually anyway, and I want more of the lesson. So please continue. Why is that important?
There are two lessons that I take from former mentors of mine. One was Max Bond Jr., who was passing in the near presence of the Lord. One of the first African-American architecture prodigies. He went to Harvard, and he said to me, when I was in college, do not let college get in the way of your education. Because there's a lot of learning outside of the halls of academia. And then Don Ryder, a partner of his and lecturer of mine, also said, never forget that architecture does not belong to us. It belongs to those people who are coming after us. We are just a conduit. And so those are major ideas, philosophies behind what I do.
So why does it belong to the others that are coming behind you?
It's much like a family name. It's just being borrowed. You're just the keeper of it for a while. So you keep it with honor and integrity.
If you think about it, buildings tend to last a little bit longer than humans.
Yes.
You didn't interrupt it. I know.
Very true.
I know. Okay,
even,
good stuff. Yeah.
Even in thinking about that, everything that you both said, I'm thinking, okay, obviously my environment is going to be affected by my surroundings, or my perception of the way that I interact with the space is going to be affected by what is there. And speaking to the theme for World Architectural Day, which is architecture for well-being, how do you see that impacting us in St. Kitts-Nevis?
Well, I think I wouldn't necessarily limit it to just St. Kitts-Nevis. I think if you do architecture deliberately, it shows. So, for example, if you have a deliberately low ceiling, it creates an intimate environment. If it's high, it makes you feel a little bit smaller, but like you are a part of something greater. So these things and how much natural light you let into a space, that should be deliberate. How it depends on the use. No, natural light wouldn't necessarily be great for filming right now. Yes. So you're in a room with no windows, right? However, if you were by a workstation, you'd feel a lot happier and a lot more content if you had natural light
coming in on
all day.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that you've already toured this building.
So that's just one little drop in the bucket of what we have to consider on a daily basis when we are designing for a space for people to use, depending on what they need it for, depending on who will be there. And what if it is deliberate? Every decision we make is deliberate.
A very loaded question here. You might need to take your time to answer it. What is your vision for the future of the architectural field in St. Kitts-Nevis, or even beyond?
I think what I would like to instill is, or become more commonplace, is a deliberate response to context. Now, the context could be cultural, physical, programmatic, whatever it is that you need done. But if we could have a more deliberate response to context, I would be a little bit happier. And that, of course, comes with education, being aware of what the context is, of which one is most important out of the list I just gave you. Or it could be financial as well. It's always important, So, I think if we could have an awareness of our context and have a deliberate response to it, I think that's what I envision for the future of architecture.
Mr. Morton over there is thinking deep. Mr. Morton, we'll wait your answer.
I would like to see a regional identity being established architecturally. We, over the years, have been occupied, and much like many other cultures, when we start to formulate our own systems, we emulate that of our former colonizers. And so everybody rants and raves about the Georgian-style buildings, but King George is long since dead. And architecture necessarily needs to be a function of its place, its time, and available technology. If we were still building pyramids, something would be horribly wrong. And so I'm looking forward to the time when one can say this is postmodern Caribbean architecture versus just postmodern or just something that other people prescribe as what they think the Caribbean should be.
That's very deep, and
Yes.
I've heard that type of discussion, but this is the first time I'm hearing it within the context of architecture, and I've never thought of it before. So thank you for opening my eyes to that.
Is the market in St. Kitts saturated for architects? He laughs. Okay, so if it is not, what?
No,
It is?
that's right. I would not say it is.
Okay.
But what I will say is St. Kitts in the Caribbean has the most architects and people trained in architecture, professionals, in the Caribbean. We have the most trained people in architecture per capita in the Caribbean.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, what advice would you gentlemen give to someone who wants to join your field of architecture?
Depends on the level that they are right now. If you're high school, focus on math,
Okay.
physics,
Okay.
and of course drawing. You need to have an appreciation of nature, and the best thing to do is go out and draw trees. Anybody who works in my office knows that there's an exercise that they get every time.
To go out and draw a tree?
Draw a tree. Absolutely.
What?
What happens is you need to have an appreciation for size and scale and proportion. And the best reference for that is Mother Nature.
Okay.
So a simple tree, what Mother Nature prescribes as proportion, you have it as a reference and you don't even know it.
But I might come back with a stick tree because I have no.
Oh, absolutely. No. So what happens is you're going to be drawing the tree that's in your mind and not the tree that you're actually seeing.
Seeing. See? Woe is me.
Wow.
So, Mr. Morton, I don't want to leave you out. What advice would you have? Mr. Alvaranga, or he made reference to.
No, those are sound suggestions.
Sounds okay. I'm just saying,
Those
maybe
are
at the
some
college
suggestions.
level, you might have something else to tell them. Or...
No, at the college level, at CFBC, where I lecture, we allow students to come in without physics.
Okay.
And we give them a physics course. However, if they want to go on to do architecture, because it's just an introductory course for draftspersons, if you want to go on to do architecture, you're not going to be accepted into an architecture school without O-level or CXC level physics. So you have to have physics because structures are involved and we don't want buildings dropping on people. They say architects, well, doctors kill people one at a time, architects kill by the hundreds.
Ooh.
That's something we will not soon forget.
Yes,
Back in the days, what happens is when an architect finished a building, before they removed the scaffolding,
You
they
got to
used to
stand
put
under it.
the architect to stand under the scaffolding so that
And they remove it.
if the building fell down, he would be the first casualty.
One chance to make an error.
Motivation to get the job right.
But then, I don't want us to lose the idea because even as far back as Babylon, there were building codes. And that was part of the building code. Okay?
You can't get more.
So you get one
You can't
chance.
get more accountability.
Oh
if you're
my
lucky.
gosh! Wow.
I can't imagine what your meetings are like, honestly. Definitely lively.
Yeah.
All right, so what can you tell us about some of the future plans and activities of the Institute of Architecture here in St. Kitts-Nevis?
Well, like I said, we have been dormant for a while because of COVID, and we're going to jumpstart our meetings again. And we want to maybe even have people from the press, from your side here. There's a public awareness aspect to our aims as well. And maybe we could have some kind of partnership where we could bring information and awareness to the public, and then you could have content for your shows as well.
You said it live. I love it. I love it. I love it.
And so there becomes a little bit of promotion as well for the members of the institute, right?
Indeed.
So that's one thing we're thinking of.
Mr. Morton?
Well, my perspective is a little different because I'm the president of the Federation of Caribbean Architects Associations.
As well.
Okay.
So
Of which the SKN
is a member. Yes,
Oh,
a long-standing member.
Congrats.
And we range from Guyana, Belize, all the way up to Cuba. Cuba is also a member. And so we do have that interaction with other institutes. In August, there was the Commonwealth Association of Architects Biennale in Trinidad and Tobago. And we participated, some of us participated, and we get training, as we call it, continuous professional development points, etc., from as far as Australia.
Nice.
And so there's an ongoing effort to make sure that we remain on the cutting edge.